Good morning, everyone, and how are you today?
Morning.
It's kind of cold, but I hope it gets a little bit warmer during the day. We were here on Friday night for a demonstration of mediumship for the student demonstration. And I think we had what nine students demonstrate.
Yeah.
It was a good night, you know. At the very end of the night, I was sitting here because I drank a lot of water. I had to run out to the bathroom really fast. And when I was coming back in, kind of an interesting thing happened to me where there was a lady. I forget her name. But
Right, yeah,
yeah, and she said to me, she goes, "I know you from somewhere," and I was like, "You know me from somewhere?" I had no idea. And then she's like, "I work for the Hackensack Water Company." I said, "Okay, well, many years ago, like in 1981, I had a summer job, temporary job. When I first got out of school, the Hackensack Water Company comes in, which you can't possibly remember being that, but it turned out that's where she knew me from. And then it kind of set my mind to like think about, well, what will we talk about today? And sometimes things don't always go like you think that they're going to go. And like originally when we planned this talk, I was going to do half of the talk and Arlene Means was going to do the other half. So we had to come up with a topic. So yesterday, Arlene and I spoke on Zoom and we said, okay, well, this is the subject we'll talk about. And, you know, so I kind of like had it like worked out in my mind, but I would say like in a broader sense, and then she would come in and fill in her experience. But working in special education like I do, they always tell you modify it. So when I found out this morning that Arlene was not going to be able to be with us, I had to modify what I was going to say. So Sharon and I had spent a couple of hours in between the class and the demonstration together. And we were talking about, you know, how do we all get to this point where we're at this center, we're in a spiritualist church, which I never thought that I would ever end up here, you know, and how it's the journey, you know, provided. And some of it I think was, you know, in the choices that I made, and some of it was kind of like, I think I was kind of guided. I mean, that's not making sound kind of corny, but let me just go and explain. I mean, when I was in school, when I was in college, I had absolutely no idea what I was going to do with my life. I was like, but I always knew one thing in my heart that I always wanted to help somebody. So it was like, one of the things that drew close to my heart was being a school teacher. And I thought to myself, okay, well, that's a pretty safe profession and I'll study that. And I did. And I came out and I had a Bachelor of Arts degree in English and I had an English teacher certification, which was my plan. And along the way in college, some of my plans had initially changed. I always liked football, but I was never good at sports. So, I mean, I would say to myself, well, how can I be close to the football team and help, but not, you know, I was not a football player. So, I mean, I used to work like on the sidelines, like bring the water to the football players, pick up the towels, do whatever. And along the way, I met the chaplain. And one day we had a big game against a rival school, and the football player asked the chaplain, okay, now that we pray, does that mean that we're going to win? And the chaplain turns around and he looked at the football player and he was like, we'll win if you block your man. So it was kind of like, it gave me like an idea, like, you know, like prayer was a good thing, but prayer has to be linked with an action. So, I mean, I was on that squad for 3 years. And at the end of graduating, I mean, I had 3 options of what to do with my life. One option was, and all my English professors wanted me to go on to study at Cornell University and get an MA in English and, you know, keep going down that road. And then I kept getting invitations from the Archdiocese of Rochester to go into the seminary, which I didn't want to do. And then the third choice, which I made, was just to not do either of those and just come home and see how, you know, things would spin out. So, I mean, I went into teaching and I mean, I taught in a lot of different places. I mean, I've had a 4-year career and I mean, I've had some really like rewarding times and I've had some really like heartbreaking times. And, you know, just to summarize it, but I mean, it's been a real life experience. And I come back to all the time of like the teachers that taught me. And they said, you know, as long as you have a pure heart and you like what you're doing, you know, like you're never going to starve. You'll always make a good, you know, you'll make an adequate living. That's pretty much the way that it's been. But the one thing that one of my English professors emphasized to me, and I always remembered this, he said, you may not always make a lot of money, he goes, but you'll have a very rewarding career. And that I have to say is true. And in the path of my teaching career, I spent 10 years working for the Archdiocese of Newark. Actually, probably more than that, maybe 14. But I spent 10 years working under Carmelites. And I mean, I learned all of the things in the Catholic Church that the Catholic Church taught and espoused, and I did everything I was supposed to do. And then I would look at my life sometimes. They said, well, I followed all the rules. You know, why did these terrible things happen to me? I had no idea. And then I realized, it's not just happening to me, it happens to everybody. Why was somebody killed? Why was somebody injured? Why is somebody sick? I don't know the answers to that. I still don't know the answers to that. But I mean, I can never quite find the right answer. And one of the turning points in my life for me was when my mother was passing away. I mean, at that time, I had started to become a little bit interested in spiritualism because I had some losses, and through a variety of ways. I mean, I went to a spiritualist church and I was intrigued by it. So I mean, we were always raised Catholic, but we're not like really like, diehard in the wool Catholics and say, we do all this. We would go like to church on Easter and Christmas, and most of the other times we didn't go to church, So I mean, my mother was pretty much the same way, and she was afraid at the end, and she was looking for an answer. So I mean, some of the things I learned a little bit, like from going to a spiritualist church, I tried to impart to my mother, like, it wouldn't be like, it's not like the Catholic Church. Like when I was growing up, I was always afraid of dying because they always put fear in my heart. Like I wasn't good enough to go to heaven. I'm going to hell and whatever, But then through spiritualism, I kind of like got a more modified view of like how God works. And, not that all the answers, but my perspective started to change a little bit from like one of like fear to one of like, looking at God in the light of love and not in the light of fear. So progressing on through that, I mean, I spent a number of years going to a spiritualist church, which eventually I dropped my relationship with that church because I didn't feel like I was getting anything out of it. And I was lost. And then, like I said, I came to accidentally, meet Bill Collar, who had done a reading for me at the other church. And so I knew him, but then I didn't see him for several years. And then, I would always go to like the Tuesday circle classes with Sharon, with Carol, and I liked it, But I mean, I was not involved in mediumship. I wasn't involved with any of that stuff. And then eventually, like, an opportunity was provided for me to come here. And when I came here, I found a home, and I said, and I was still conflicted though, because I was still going to Catholic church at the time. So I would go to Catholic church on one day and another day, come here. And then I said to myself, I'm living in two different worlds, and they're never going to meet. And so, I mean, eventually I just stopped going to Catholic church because I just wasn't really finding the answers to the things that I needed that were important to me, but I was finding the answers here. And before I started to make my decision, and that was one of the pivotal decisions that I made, was to invest my time in Inner Spiritual Center. I was talking to Bill Collar, and Bill Collar said to me, and sometimes he has a way of just putting the point across to you, and he's like, by your actions, he goes, you're making a choice. I mean, I'm saying to myself, well, I can't really step away from the Catholic Church because I was raised up in all this, but I'm saying, but I really don't believe in it anymore. I'm not saying I don't believe in God, but my perception of God is different. And my path was, I'm on a different path, and now I'm on a better path. So, I mean, it's kind of just through a series of coincidences that I came here. And like I said, that lady kind of put me in reflection a little bit the other day when she said, I knew you from 40 years ago. I mean, I can't remember somebody that I saw yesterday, or sometimes even an hour ago. So I don't really know how the heck she ever remembered me. But I mean, there must have been a reason for it. So like I said, Sharon and I had a couple of hours of time in between. So we talked a little bit, and she was, putting her perspective, which was different than my experiences about. She came to this, but I said, we all we're all on a path, we're all on a journey. And sometimes, we are making a free will decision, which, I believe that in free will and independence and everything like that. But I also believe that there's also an edge on it too. But sometimes God takes us down a path that maybe we don't want to be on, but we're on it. Like I said, like I have a lot of things now that I have to face with sickness, death, and things of my own family, which I don't have an answer for. But the good part of it is I have a support system. I have a network, and I have a place that I can call home, that I can hold on to. And that's what helps me get through life. So when times are like difficult, I can say, okay, well, I can rely on Inner Spiritual Center because this is my home, these are my friends, and this is my family. And with that, I'll just say Thank you for listening to me, and please take the love and the blessing.